Hi everybody, I am Bhavika Gupta. Welcome to my channel, The Global Dentists. It's been a long time, I know, but now I'm back for good. If you're new here, let me introduce myself. I am Bhavika Gupta, a dentist from India, and I'm on a journey to further my career by becoming a licensed dentist in the United States. Today in this video, I want to talk about a big milestone that I achieved, and I want to help you get through that milestone. The milestone of taking the ADAT exam, also known as the Advanced Dental Admissions Test. This milestone is very important for dentists like me who want to gain a dental licensure in the US or Canada. Moreover, it's also important for dental students in the US who want to take up residency after their DDS. If you want to know more about ADAT and its exam format, check out the links below because I will not be covering that in this video. In this particular video, I will be covering my experience of giving the exam and preparing for the exam. Moreover, I'll be covering the study materials I used to prepare for the exam. Through this video, I want to give you a real on-the-ground look of what the exam is like and what the whole experience is like. Because let's face it, there's so much information and misinformation about this exam online. Some of it is relevant, most of it is irrelevant. It can get really hard to piece together what information to believe and what information to not believe. Therefore, through this video, let me help you understand this exam better. Now, you might be wondering, why should I listen to this person? Well, not to brag, but I did score in the 99th percentile on my ADAT exam, which I gave in July of 2023. So I scored an overall score of 640. The actual result is somewhere on the screen here. Moreover, I've been through the challenges and the uncertainties that come with giving and preparing for this exam. Therefore, allow me to share my experience with you all. That's all. I want to share my insights, strategies, and things I wish I knew before giving the exam so that you don't make the same mistakes I did and so that you can approach this exam with more confidence. For the sake of simplicity, I've divided this video in 5 sections. Biomedical Sciences section, Clinical Sciences section, Research section, Exam Day Experience, and Post-Exam Reflections. In each of the sections, I discuss the relevant study material as well as my own experience of going about preparing for that particular section. So whether you're just starting to think of giving the ADAT or you're deep into preparing for it, stick around for the whole of video because I will be sharing a lot of tea in this video. So grab a cup of coffee, take a deep breath, and let's get into it. To start with, the study materials that I used for this particular section were INBDE First Aid, ADAT Knockout, and my own self-made Anki cards. First aid was my go-to material for a rough reading and understanding of concepts, whereas ADAT Knockout was the question bank that I used to reinforce all that information and make sure that I was ready for the exam day. So my study process had 4 major components. One by one, I'll go through each component in detail. First, I did a rough reading of first aid and I paired it with YouTube videos in order to understand concepts. So what I would do is I would watch a YouTube video which would condense all the major themes into a video, so it would be like a lecture. Then while I was watching the video, I would kind of skim through the first aid and annotate, underline on the first aid. Then I would think as to what particular thing I found difficult and hard to understand. I would then further make notes on that particular thing rather than making notes for everything. So basically, pairing first aid with YouTube videos really helped me out because I am a visual learner and it helped quicken the process. Once I'd done a very rough reading of the material of that particular topic or that particular subject, I would go to ADAT Knockout and attempt questions on that particular subject. So for example, if I'm doing dental anatomy, I would first watch the mental dental videos on dental anatomy. Then I would go to first aid and maybe underline all the topics or all the points that were not mentioned in the video. And then I would see what I found difficult, what I found hard to memorize. I would make notes on that. After that, I would go to ADAT knockout and solve questions. I would see what all I got right, what all I got wrong. I would pay extra attention to the things I got wrong. I would make Anki flashcards of those particular things. Now, while solving these questions, if I came across a point that I had no clue about, or something that was just really hard to memorize, instead of putting it on my digital notes or an Anki flashcard, I put it into a Google document, and I called this Google document as stuff I didn't know. These were like important things because this was coming directly from ADAT knockout. By the end of my whole preparation period, I had this 35 pages long document that was filled with tidbits of information from ADAT knockout. So therefore, this particular document was my secret weapon for this exam. I would go through this document once every day before sleeping so that I could have this information memorized by the time the exam day approached. Particular strategy helped me tremendously. You obviously can do what works for you, but if you're somebody who thinks would benefit from it, definitely give it a try. In conclusion, I had a 4-step process. First, I would do a rough reading using first aid as well as YouTube videos, which would help me build my basic concepts. Then I would attempt questions on the ADAT knockout question bank. Third, of all the questions I got wrong, or of all the questions or information that I had no idea about, I would make Anki flashcards, and I would then, solve these Anki flashcards. So they sort of became my practice questions. Fourth, I made a document called Stuff I Don't Know on a normal Google Doc sheet where I put random pieces of information which otherwise would have gotten lost in my notes or Anki flashcards. And this particular document I reviewed every single night before going to sleep. Timeline wise, I initially had planned to cover the whole uh, biomedical section in 10 days. However, again, because I was not in touch with these subjects, it took me closer to 20 days to actually completely review the whole section. If you are planning to prepare for this exam, make sure that you give enough time to biomedical section because it's a vast section. Some very important topics that I got a lot of questions on in my exam were head and neck anatomy, carbohydrate, protein, lipids, metabolism, occlusion. The entire dental anatomy is very, very important. Immunology is also very important, as well as all sorts of syndromes that are mentioned in the first aid pathology chapter. These areas are heavily tested, and again, this is not an exclusive list. There are also many other topics. However, in my particular exam, these were the topics that they mainly tested on. This particular section I felt was much easily manageable than the biomedical sections. As somebody who has given the INBDE exam, I felt that the clinical sciences section was much like the INBDE. However, there were still some nuances which I will talk about later in the video. For study material in this particular section, I used First Aid Part 2 as well as my INBDE notes and mental dental videos. My INBDE notes that I made during my INBDE preparation were a lifesaver. Other than that, I used ADAT Knockout for practice questions. Another life-saving study resource is the INBDE Bootcamp. This resource is essential for you if you're someone who's yet to appear for the INBDE or someone who's preparing for the ADAT and needs more clinical sciences practice questions. Some features that I love about it are it has 2500 plus high yield questions and it has high yield cheat sheets for all clinical subjects. My favorite is that it has create a test feature where you can keep testing yourself endlessly, and most importantly, they provide a 100% pass guarantee for INBDE with a 3 to 6 month subscription. Their memberships are for 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months. My recommendation would be that 1 month is perfect for ADAT, while 3 months is perfect for INBDE. But Bhavika, it's so expensive. I know, which is why I'm offering you an exclusive discount code. Use the code Bhavika at checkout for a 10% off on a bootcamp subscription. Moreover, trust me, it's worth every single penny. I wouldn't have been able to survive INBDE without it. My studying process for this particular section was also much like my process in the Biomedical Sciences section, such that it was a 4-step process. So, first, I did a rough reading of all the subjects using First Aid Part 2, as well as my INBDE notes and mental dental videos. Next, I did practice questions on the ADAT Knockout question bank, and whatever questions I got wrong or whatever information that I came across which I didn't know about earlier, I made Anki flashcards for those. And then I kept doing those flashcards and again, and I treated them as sample questions. The last step was to always review my stuff I don't know document. Timeline wise, I was very strict in this particular section to stick to the timeline I had assigned to myself. For clinical sciences, I decided to give 1 day per subject such that I was done with clinical sciences in about 10 days. In my particular exam, I was heavily tested on prostho, endo, ortho, and perio. Moreover, my exam had tons of clinical case based scenarios and very, very few standalone questions. So, most of them were clinical scenario based questions. In conclusion, the clinical sciences section is all about your critical thinking skills as a dentist. So, it's imperative and very important for you to have a well rounded knowledge of all the clinical subjects as well as the interlinking or the interrelationship between all these subjects. Moreover, treatment planning and diagnosis is extremely important. A lot of the questions that I got were based on treatment planning, so make sure that you know the phases of treatment planning really well. The research section of the ADAT exam was honestly quite challenging for me because honestly, I had not formally studied statistics since class 12 in high school. Therefore, I was quite out of touch with math and statistics. However, with proper resources, I was able to prepare for it and be very confident while giving the exam. The main resources that I used to study for this particular section were USMLE First Aid's Biostatistics chapter. I also used a lot of YouTube videos and I watched a lot of YouTube videos to understand concepts and try and grasp statistics to the best of my ability. The third, of course, was ADAT knockout questions. My studying process, again, very similar to the previous ones, was first I did a rough reading using the USMLE First Aid Biostatistics chapter, as well as videos on YouTube. Then I went on to solve questions and to practice questions on the ADAT knockout question bank. The questions that I got wrong and all the new information that I got through those questions, I condensed all of that into Anki flashcards, which I reviewed again and again to reinforce all that information. Again, I made small notes of tidbits of information into my stuff I don't know document, which I reviewed once every day, especially before sleeping. Before sleeping, because the nighttime used to be, when I would just chill out and I didn't feel like doing much. So I just, take out that document and just give it a passive read or something. My bedtime read in a way. It took me about 7 to 8 days to go through my first rough reading for this particular section. Some important topics that I was tested on heavily were sensitivity, specificity, biases, confidence intervals, statistical errors, p value, so like all of that. I would say biases is extremely important for this particular exam. The good thing about the research section is that the information is quite limited. Unlike biomedical sciences or clinical sciences, which are like two different worlds of their own, research has limited information which you can review, and therefore the studying time for research section is limited. Having said that, the challenge arises with the kind of content you have to study for the research section, in the sense that while the information is limited, the information itself is quite challenging to understand. Depending on your comfort level with statistics and maths, maybe give it more time or less time, totally depends on you. So, in all, it took me about 2.5 months to prepare for this particular exam. Out of the 2.5 months, I used about 40 days to do my initial rough reading of everything. And then the rest of the days, I mostly did practice questions on ADAT knockout. I did the sample paper available on the ADA website. And I just kept on reviewing all my notes, all my questions, all my Anki flashcards again and again. And I tried to keep my calm before the exam so that I don't lose my mind. So, yes, that was my preparation of the three sections in all. All right, let's talk about the exam day. The good news is that the ADAT exam is only 4.5 hours long. So it's much, much shorter than the INBDE exam, which was a huge relief because INBDE was quite a marathon for me. Therefore, I was very happy to give a shorter exam. I didn't really care about the difficulty level. I was just happy that the exam was short. First and foremost, I want to talk about the time management aspect of this particular exam. Here is the format of the exam, and as you can see, the first section and the second section are much longer than the third section. Moreover, there is a 10-minute break in between each section. While I did think that the first two sections were quite manageable, in the sense that I did not feel I was hurried or anything, I was able to answer all the questions in the given time and I didn't feel hurried at all. However, in the third section, which I had to answer 40 research related questions in 45 minutes, I did think that had I not rushed, I would not have been able to complete that particular section. In the third section, the questions are quite lengthy. It can take a bit time for you to assimilate and understand the question before you can actually answer the question. So in the research section, I would advise you, if you're planning to give the exam, to be as quick as possible and to not take it lightly. Moreover, the 10-minute break in between each section is actually quite short. It might seem like a lot of time, but it's not. It's quite short. So if you're planning to take a bathroom break or have a snack, make sure that you're quick about it. Otherwise, by the time you come back and you've exceeded the 10 minutes, the clock doesn't actually stop. So you will lose out on time if you don't make it back from your break on time. Other than that, my overall experience of giving the exam was quite seamless. It was actually quite good. I got to have two breaks in between. It was stress free, other than the research section. In conclusion, I would say that the exam day is quite manageable and it should be stress free if you are well prepared for the exam. Post exam reflections. Especially in the research section, there were a few unexpected questions that I had no idea about. For example, some biases that I never heard of, or something that I had never heard of, and that's okay. I think the aim of those questions is to throw you off so as to assess how you would, act in such a situation. I would say keep your calm, answer the question to the best of your ability, and mark it so that once you're through with the section, you can come back and, you know, try to analyze that question further in order to use whatever information you're provided with to answer that question to the best of your abilities. Point is, don't get thrown off and just stay focused. Remember the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule says that 80% of results come from 20% of the syllabus. I thought that for this particular exam, this rule stands very true. I'll give you an example. While I was studying for microbiology, I felt very overwhelmed. I mean, you might know that it has so many bacteria, viruses, parasites, God knows what, and I just felt overwhelmed. So while I was answering questions on the ADAT knockout, I realized that most questions in microbiology were focused on staph and strep, on staphylococcus and streptococcus bacteria. So I caught on to that theme and I did a deep dive into those two particular organisms, as well as gram positive and gram negative bacteria. By focusing on that major chunk of the syllabus and not focusing on the lesser important microorganisms, I was able to cover microbiology in hardly 1 or 2 days. Therefore, I would advise you to follow the 80-20 rule and focus on big chunks or themes of information rather than memorizing each line of first aid. ADAT knockout versus the real ADAT. There weren't many repeat questions from ADAT knockout because ADAT knockout, I feel, is not designed in that particular way to give us repeat questions. ADAT knockout is designed in a way to help us understand what is important for the exam and what's not. Along similar lines, whatever score you get in your ADAT knockout practice tests, do not take it too seriously. Instead, use it to extrapolate as to what the important themes and topics are and then study those in detail. So don't let the low score on your practice test bum you out, because those scores are meant to help you and not to discourage you. Time management is also extremely important in the research section, like I had mentioned before. Make sure that you practice increasing your reading speed, and make sure that you practice enough questions in order to attempt research questions confidently on the exam day. My final thoughts regarding the ADAT exam is that it's quite manageable. It can be challenging depending on your background and depending on how comfortable you are with all the subjects. Other than that, it is quite manageable with the right resources and the right timetable. Stick to a focused plan, use your time wisely, and remember that it's not about the details but about the bigger picture and your critical thinking skills as a dentist. Trust your preparation and go to give the exam confidently. You've got this. I hope I've provided you with a complete look of what the ADAT exam is like. And if you have any questions, feel free to write them below in the comments. I will definitely answer them. Other than that, if you found this video even a teeny tiny bit helpful, please do subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we post next. I wish you all the best with your journey, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.